Thank you everybody and welcome to another session of the TCS code NQT or TCS Ninja that we're doing. So this is another session that we're doing on that, and what we're going to cover today is a topic of TCS Ninja NQT, specifically pattern questions. That's what we're going to look at. So we're going to have a look specifically at the pattern questions over here. So what do I mean by pattern questions, and what you can actually see in the pattern questions? I'll just just start that in about 2 minutes. But before that, just let me say, please subscribe to this channel. The moment you subscribe, other people also get to know that we are doing something. So you will also get notifications on the future tutorials that we release. And from today till the end date of NQT, we are going to do a webinar on NQT Ninja questions. And the moment that ends, we know that Wipro is going to hire after that. So we're going to do webinars on the Wipro sessions. So we're going to have till such time that everybody gets placed, we are going to keep doing more and more sessions. So make sure that you are online and you are watching all of the sessions, and please subscribe. If you subscribe, then only you will get the notification, and then you will come to know that we are doing a webinar. So do subscribe, and we are setting up the schedule for all of these sessions beforehand. So you will get a notification that a webinar is scheduled for tomorrow. Let's say you'll get the notification the moment we schedule it. You don't need to wait and ask us every time whether we are going to do a webinar or not. Okay, all right, so subscribe and do share with your friends. Don't study alone, share with your friends. It's always fun with friends, right? So let's get started with today's topic. And just before I go ahead and speak about today's topic, a couple of updates that I wanted to give you. So the first things first is, this is the pattern of NQT, and I know I've covered this in the last two sessions, and some of you might be thinking, why am I covering this again? Well, this is mainly for those students for whom I have not yet covered this. So some of the students are coming here for the first time, so please make sure that just wait a bit. Let me cover this and we'll get to the question. So for those students who are coming first time, who don't know about NQT and Ninja, there are 4 sections totally. As per last year, there were 4 sections. There is English, Quants, Programming MCQs, and Coding. In English and Quants, you will just be like, English will be given a comprehension. You have to read that comprehension and answer some questions. Quants, it's your basic profit loss, HCF, LCM, those kind of questions. Programming MCQs, I'll discuss this in detail today about what are the questions you can be asked in programming MCQs, and coding also I'll discuss what are the topics you can be asked. As always, my suggestion is focus completely on these 2 sections. The reason is they account for 43 marks. The remaining 35 marks are also important. I'm not saying they are not, but these are things, English and quantitative aptitude, are things you can probably pick up in the last time. So you can probably pick this up in your last few days, 2-3 days or 4-5 days, but you need not spend so much time on it as you spend on programming MCQs and coding, because programming MCQs and coding are really, you can't do last minute batting on this one. You really, a lot of you would have done this kind of programming in your first year, and now you're suddenly coming to your 4th year and you've not seen that programming. So don't waste time, start doing the programming MCQs and coding right away. Okay, so let me just discuss a little bit about the programming MCQs. So in programming MCQs, these are the topics that we've generally seen coming earlier. And for those of you who are interested, who have a pen and paper, please make a note of these. So what we have in the programming MCQs, you'll have questions related to increment and decrement operators. So you'll have like questions related to increment, decrement, and so on. Okay, so these are some of the questions, and in MCQs, these are some of the most tricky questions. For example, what would be the value of something like minus minus C plus plus, right? What would be the value of that? Or what would be the value of D minus 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 minus? So these are all trick questions, and you need to know the answers to all of these questions before you go to the MCQ. So please prepare well on something like this, on the increment and decrement operators. Then also you should be preparing on the C pointers. So pointers is again a favorite concept to be asked in MCQs, because they can do something like star 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 P, right? So these are kind of things that they will ask you, and then they'll ask you a little bit about pointer manipulation. So do revise on this. Even though you might be a Java student, you might be a Python student, it doesn't matter, you will still be asked questions on C pointers, because for everybody, at least 99%, first semester pointers are covered. So please make sure that you go ahead and practice on the C pointers. The third is something called order notation. So this is nothing but your big O of n square or big O of n or something like that, right? This is a different concept. A lot of you may not have studied this in your first year. Please go up and revise on this topic. We will also release some tutorials on this, but please make sure that you go and revise on these topics also. Finally, you will have certain MCQs based on searching sorting. So things like bubble sort or selection sort or merge sort, right? What actually happens in them, they'll give you a few arrays and they'll say, if I apply merge sort, but if I change this small condition, what is actually going to happen over there? So in that sense, revising your bubble, selection and merge sort are all very, very important. Okay, so these are the topics you can expect in your programming MCQs. And one more thing I want to just tell everybody today is, all of the previous year's programming MCQs, we are in the process of getting them, and I think by the end of this week you will see them online on the Edyst platform also, so you can go ahead and practice on the Edyst platform. Now the coding languages, so that is for the coding round, we just discussed the programming MCQs, so we were just discussing the programming MCQs, but for the coding round, you can code in any one of these languages, that is C, C++, Java, Python. There might be some other languages, but most of the students prefer these languages. Again, just to repeat over here, that do not try to change your language right now. Like for example, if you're already a C student, don't try to go and learn Python. It will not help you at all. In fact, stick to your own language. There is no time right now to shift your language or change your language. Stick to your own language and move to another language after your test or whatever, but not before the test. Okay, before the test you need to continue on your language, because there's no time left. We have only few 10-15 days. In that time, don't try to learn a new language. Okay, so we just discussed about the programming MCQs. The coding question, I'll show you an example today of another coding question and we'll discuss that. One thing that I wanted to just share with you is English and quants. We have a surprise coming for you regarding English and quants, so stay tuned for that. In a couple of webinars we'll be announcing that. So for English and quants as well, we have something ready for you. But right now let's shift our focus to programming MCQs and coding, which are the maximum of the NQT Ninja. What I mean by the maximum here is, if you don't do these rounds, you're definitely not going to get through. If you do them, obviously your English quants has to be good, but if your programming MCQs or coding are not good, then definitely you're not going through to the next round. So today's question, what we're going to do is, the title and the topic for today is pattern questions, and these pattern questions really, I know, are some of the most difficult ones. Most students, when they are in their first year, get confused at this part only, and then they stop programming. So what we're going to discuss today in the patterns question is, number one, we're going to discuss how to actually look at a patterns question, how to understand a pattern question, and two, how to write the pseudocode for it, and then three, how you can actually write the actual code for it. Now I will share the code with you. I'm not going to run and submit and all of that today. All I'm going to do is share the pseudocode with you, share the code with you. But before that, you will realize the most important part here is to get the logic of the question. If you don't have the logic of the question properly, you can keep doing whatever trial and error you want. You're not going to get the actual solution. So what we're going to discuss right now is a patterns question. But more importantly, please observe the way I am approaching the patterns question. Don't try to copy like for like that, oh, any patterns question we have to do this. No, look at the approach. The approach will help you understand how you're supposed to approach a patterns question. So let's first look at the question. The question says, and this is a very simple question, you have all seen these kind of questions before, but that doesn't mean you will get it easily. It just means that it's very, very famous. If some of you find it difficult, it's completely fine. I know that many of you are coming after a long break of programming. So please don't think that it's too difficult. We are going to do it step by step. So the question is something like this. It's called a star pyramid, a star triangle, whatever you want to call it, right? So you can get whatever you want over there. But what you see over here is that when let's say n is equal to 4, right? This is the pattern. You have 1 star, you have 3 stars in the second row, then you have 5 stars in the third row, and you have about 7 stars in the fourth row. Then if n is equal to 5, you're going to have 1 star in the first row, 3 stars in the second row, 5 stars in the third row, 7 stars in the fourth row, and 11 stars in the fifth row, right? So just observe it, look at it. We can all see some pattern over here. In fact, we are humans. If I tell you, can you please write the pattern for n equal to 10, you will be very happily be able to write n is equal to 10 pattern, because to you it will come very, very naturally. Because you know that, okay, there are about these many rows, so we will be able to do it. By looking at it, you're able to do. But how do you actually do it in real life? Like, how do I get a computer to do this? How do I make a computer understand this? Remember, as I was saying yesterday, a computer is a dumb machine. You have to make sure it understands line by line. Even if you miss a semicolon, it will not understand. So you have to make sure that it understands line by line what is happening. So that's what we're going to do. How do we make sure that it understands line by line? Just by getting one input, that is n is equal to 4, n is equal to 5, it could be n is equal to 1. Just by getting this one input, how will it understand what exactly is happening? So let me share a few tips with you on what you should actually be doing in such questions. Okay, so the first things first is always, for any of these questions, your first question should be how many rows are there, right? So how many rows are there in that sense? Okay, so for example, over here, when n is equal to 4, how many rows do we have? We have 4 rows. But that's the first question you should ask. How many rows are there? Are there 4 rows, 3 rows, 2 rows, 1 rows? And when I say how many rows are there in relation to the input? So when we had n is equal to 4 over here, we had 4 rows. When n is equal to 5 over here, we had 5 rows. So how many rows are there? Our answer over here, we'll come to the answers one by one, but our answers here would be that there are n rows. So how many rows are there? N. Okay. The next question you should ask is how many columns are there? Okay. Either this, or you should ask how many spaces, how many elements. So this is what I was saying initially, that this is the approach. It's not a direct formula. You will never get a direct formula. But what you should know is how many columns or how many spaces or how many elements. And it could be more than one of these things. For example, let's just go back. If you look over here, in the first row, we have 1 element and certain amount of spaces. In the second row, we have 3 elements and certain amount of spaces. In the third row, we have 5 elements and certain amount of spaces. In the fourth row, we have 7 and no spaces over here. Okay, so that's where we stop. For n is equal to 5, we have 1 element and some spaces, 3 elements and then some spaces, 5 elements, some spaces, 7 element, 1 space, and then 9 elements over here, right? So we are answering the question one by one, that how many spaces do we have, how many elements do we have. In this particular question, we are not concerned about columns as such. Generally, columns are concerned by us when, suddenly, let's say we have a square matrix, right? Or a rectangle matrix. So, or a rectangle pattern. So let's say if n is equal to 3 and we had to print something like this, right? And something like this. So in this kind of a scenario, we are now concerned about, oh, how many columns are there? But in our case, what we really care about is how many spaces are there, how many elements are there, right? And these elements could be more than one. Like over here, we have a star element, but there will be some questions where you don't have just a star element, you will have some other elements also. So always begin your pattern question by answering these questions. Without answering these questions, you will not be able to form a proper pseudocode. And if you can't form a proper pseudocode, it will be very, very difficult for you to form a proper code. So now what we have here is, we are not really concerned about this question. How many spaces are there? How many elements are there? So let's have a look at that. What I have done is I've just colored it a little bit. So let's see what we get the answer. if you look at here, we have 3 spaces and then 1 element, right? So we have 3 spaces over here and 1 element, which means in the first row we have 3 spaces and 1 element. Okay, in the second row we have 2 spaces and 3 elements. In the third row we have 1 space and 5 elements. In the fourth row, 0 spaces and 7 elements. Okay, now this itself will give you so much clarity about what you're supposed to do. You can break down your problem into multiple problems. So for any pattern based question, what you need to be able to figure out is, number one, how many rows are there? We figured out that there are 4 rows because the input is 4. So that we got over here. So we got that there are 4 rows. Okay, now let's look at these spaces. What relation do they have to our row number? So in the first row there are 3 spaces, second row there are 2 spaces, third row there is 1 space, fourth row 0 space. What we notice is the sum of the row number and the spaces is always 4, which is what? Which is n, right? If we had the same thing for 5, the sum of these two would always be 5. So the sum of the row number and the spaces is always going to be n. What that means is we know the row number because we are the ones who are generating the rows. So if we know the row number, let's say this is the row number, right? What we need to do is just n minus row number is the number of spaces that we need to print. Right? So in every row, what we're going to do is we're going to first of all print 4 rows. In each of the rows, we're going to print the spaces first, and the number of spaces will be n minus row number into spaces. Because just look at it over here, n is 4 minus row number is 1, so we did 3 spaces. Then n is 4, row number is 2, we did 2 spaces. Then n is 3, n is 4, row number is 3, we print 1 space. When n is 4, row number is 4, we print 0 spaces. Alright, makes sense. So now we got how many spaces we need to print. Okay, that's done. That's good. Now how many stars do we need to print and how many elements do we need to print, basically speaking? Look at over here again. In the first row we print 1 element, second row we print 3 elements, third row we print 5 elements, fourth row we print 7 elements. Do you see that there's an odd number pattern over here? And if you remember from your aptitude or from your math section, how do you represent this odd number pattern? It's nothing but 2 into row number minus 1. So if you look at it, you have 2 into row number minus 1. Yes. So we have 2, row number is 1, 2 into 1 minus 1 is 1, 2 into 2 is 4, minus 1 is 3, 2 into 3, 6, minus 1 is 5, 2 into 4, 8, minus 1 is 7. So how many stars will we print? We will take 2 into row number minus 1 into stars. That is what we're going to do. We're going to print that many stars. So we printed the spaces, we printed the stars, and then we just need to print new line. That's all we need to do. Print the spaces, we'll print the stars, and then print a new line. We keep doing this for how many rows? We will do this for n rows, right? So let's look at how our pseudocode will look like. We have a pseudocode. We take input n and we have to print n rows. So we'll run a loop, whichever loop we want, but we'll print n rows. In each of the n rows, what is the first thing that we're going to do? Well, the first thing we're going to do is we have to print these spaces. So let us write the code for that, the pseudocode for that. We have to print a certain number of spaces. How many spaces do we have to print? We have to print n minus row underscore number into spaces. That's how many spaces we are going to print. That is n minus row number into spaces. Then after that, what are we going to do? We are going to print the stars. How many stars are we going to print? 2 into row number minus 1 into stars. And once you've done that, we print new line. Okay, that's what we're going to do. So this is our pseudocode. If you have understood right now what the pseudocode is converting this into your actual code is going to be very simple. No matter which logic you go for, you can go for, or which language you go for, you can go for Java, Python, C++, C, whichever language you go for, it doesn't matter as long as you are understood this logic properly. So let's translate this code one by one. Okay, so what we're going to do is, this is some C code I wrote which is wrong, so I'm going to just erase that, and I'm going to do the code in front of you right now on how we can do it. First things first is we're going to input the rows. So I assume you know how to do that. Using the scanf, you can input the number of rows, or let's just say n. So you're going to input n. We're going to use a variable I to go through n rows. So we'll do n rows first. Now in each of the rows, what are we going to do? We are going to print that many spaces. Okay, n minus row number into spaces. Over here, which is our row number? Our row number is denoted by this counter called I. That's our row number. So over here we have to print how many n minus row number spaces. Let's start another loop for int j is equal to 1, j less than equal to, how many do we need to print? Row underscore number minus n, or sorry, it was n minus row number, and row number over here is nothing but I. So we do n minus I j plus plus, right? And in that we are going to print spaces, right? So once we're done with this, we printed the spaces. Now what are we going to do? We're going to print the stars. To print the stars, how many stars are we going to print at every time? We're going to print 2 into row number minus 1 into stars. So we're going to do 2 into row number. So let's take another loop, k is equal to 1. Now what is the limit? 2 into row number minus 1. So that is 2 into row number is I minus 1. Okay, that's how many we want to do. So we'll do k less than equal to 2 into row number minus 1 stars, right? So then we do k plus plus. Okay, then printf the stars. All right, and then we print a new line, and then it keeps going on to the next row. That's really it. We just line by line, word for word, we just translated the pseudocode we had over here. So this is the pseudocode we had. We had something to do with spaces, something to do with stars, something to do with lines, and this was all covered in rows, and this was all covered in taking the input n. So that was all over there. We just took that line by line. We took the input n, then after that we ran a loop. Now the major thing that most students get confused in over here is, we have a loop and we have 2 loops within that loop. Many students think, can I do 2 loops? And generally when I do loops, I do one loop inside a loop inside another loop. So it will be like j, and inside j I'll do k. No, you can have 2 parallel loops running. Just keep thinking about what's happening. Think from a computer's point of view. It will do I equal to 1, I less than equal to n. Then it will enter the loop. What it's going to do, in the first time it enters the loop, it's going to execute the j loop. Then it's going to execute the k loop. Then it's going to print a new line. Then it will go to the next row, and so on. So it will keep doing. So unlike every day, what I'm going to do today is, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and implement this on your local machine. See how it works out for you. Are you getting the correct output or not? The one thing I've purposely left out over here is how you can scan an integer. I suggest that you go ahead and try it out yourself, how you can actually scan the integer and check it out yourself. So please go check the output of this. Is there any mistake? Is there something wrong? If there is, what can you tweak? What can you change? And go ahead and try this one out yourself on your own C compiler. You can also do this in Python. You can also do this in Java. No problem at all, right? So that is the code for this one. What I'm going to do is, in just about 5 minutes, I'll check the Q&A section. I'll see if anybody of you has any doubts. But one thing I'd suggest everybody is, right now, if this seemed too difficult to you, or if this seemed like, oh, I understood the logic, but I didn't understand how the code was written, I really urge all of you to please log on to edyst.com and start practicing, at least do the warm-up section. So I'll just share that with you. Once you actually log on to the edyst.com website, you'll see a warm-up section over here, right? You'll see a warm-up section which is completely free for everybody to do. These are free tutorials and coding exercises for you to do. So please go ahead and do try out these things, because it shows you about taking input, it shows you about functions, conditionals, it shows you about loops. There are tutorials, there is reading material. So those of you who've never coded since first year, or those of you who've even been coding but not so confident, these warm-up 1 and warm-up 2 are going to help you tremendously in getting back all of your coding knowledge, all the knowledge required, not only for NQT Ninja, but you also for Wipro, AMCAT, Mindtree, you will get it completely. So do the warm-up 1, do the warm-up 2. The warm-up 1 is free for you, then you do the warm-up 2. After that, whichever company is coming to your campus, go ahead and start doing their previous year's questions, because trust me, the best way to prepare for any company is by actually preparing for the previous year's questions of that company. Okay, so go ahead and do that. Many such questions are there. For example, the question I did, there's a very easier version of that question present, and I'll just show you that question. One second. Right. So yeah, so there's a pretty simple version of that question mentioned, where you don't even have to print the spaces, and the number of stars, let me just zoom in. So the number of stars is exactly the same as the number of rows. It's a very simple question. If you understood today's webinar, you'll be able to do this one. So try it out, try out all of these loops and patterns questions. 80% of the questions I've seen in most of these interview rounds are either loops, patterns, or a little bit of arrays and data structures. But if you prepare loops, patterns, most campus rounds you should be able to clear. So make sure you go ahead and practice these questions by yourself. And now what we're going to do is head over to the Q&A section. And just before I get to that, how do you actually log on to the Edyst platform and start doing things? Well, I will suggest that you go to this link that's called bit.ly/edyst_ccp. You have to enter this as a URL. That is, you have to enter this into your web browser. Don't enter this in Google, enter this into your web browser, bit.ly/edyst_ccp. Click apply now and you can start coding. So I'll just give you an example. When you go to that link, you will see this page. I'll show you that page that you will see. You will see this page, and on this page, one second. Yeah. So on this page, hi there, you will get to see this apply now button, and click that apply now, and you can start doing your free practice right away. So please do that. Please start and do the warm-up 1 and warm-up 2. The best part about it is I am online, so if you have any questions, doubts, you can ask me, or you can always ask our other mentors as well, right? So that's what I would suggest that you all do right now. And I'll just now move to the question answer session. I see a lot of comments, so let me just go to the comments and let's see what are the questions that we have.
Please tell me some important tough coding questions in TCS NQT.
So somebody's asking, please tell me the important tough questions asked in TCS NQT. So rather than just me telling you, let me just show them to you. So we have about 12 questions from previous year's NQTs, because again NQT was just started about last year. So if you just look at it, we have about 12 questions over here, sorry, 8 questions over here, plus 10 2 more questions in the warm-up. So you can check these questions out. These are the important ones. These are the previously asked questions. Do check out these questions. On top of that, we are adding similar questions like these, so you will get a lots of practice. So all you have to do is to check out these questions, come to TCS previous year's question box, click it, and you will get all of the questions that have been previously asked.
So could you explain the pattern printing that was given in Code Vita?
So somebody's asking, can you explain the pattern printing given in Code Vita? Yes, I can. I don't know which question you are referring to, but please share that question with us on this specific website. So that's on that email ID, team@edyst.com. Just share it with us on that, and we'll be more than happy to help you. We've got a couple of requests of solving some Code Vita questions, and we've solved them and we've sent the solution back to them. So make sure that just send us the email, or just log on to edyst.com. You can chat with me, you will find me over there. And if we'll just observe the question and probably give us about 2-3 hours, and we'll give you back the solution and the algorithm for it. Right.
So this specific to this particular problem, what if there will be spaces in between two elements or starting and ending or in line only patriarchal places?
Okay, I have just seen this comment. So Pujita is asking, what if there will be spaces in between two elements, or starting and ending, or in line only? So I think it's a very good question. So the question is basically asking, I've just shown for this, but really what happens, let's say if there were spaces over here. So for example, what her question is that we have all of these things, but what if I give certain spaces between them? So just to give you an example, this is for n is equal to 4, but in between them, what if I had certain spaces, like I had a space like this, right? And I had a space like this, um, or even something else. So now we are doing the spaces here, but what if I had more spaces, or what generally happens? Well, again, you don't need to worry too much about, like in this particular case you won't need to worry, because if you had certain spaces, then the spaces before still remain constant, and instead of printing a star, all you have to do is print a star plus a space. So it becomes, earlier you were printing star, now it becomes star plus a space. That's what it becomes. Now, what if there were spaces in different places and things? See, the major thing here is, a pattern is a pattern because it follows a certain mathematical rule. In our case, we saw that the spaces followed a rule, the stars followed a rule, and in this case over here, the stars plus the space are following a rule, right? So if you are able to determine that rule, you will be able to make it into a loop also. There's no problem in that. So what you need to do is, don't think about what if there's a space here, what if there is a slash over there. Don't think like that. Think, what is the rule that everybody is following, right? In our question here, the rule was pretty simple. The rule was, there will be n minus I spaces and 2 into I minus 1 stars. Once you understood that part, writing the loop is very easy. So in whichever question you have a doubt, or in whichever pattern you're having a doubt, try to frame the question like that. How many stars are there? How many spaces are there? And for each row number, what is the pattern that they're following? What is the mathematical rule that they're following? And you should be able to crack it.
So what if we typical pattern that contains Fibonacci numbers instead of stars?
Okay, so what if we got a pattern that contains both Fibonacci numbers instead of stars? Again, a good question, and again, I'll say the same response. Everybody, I mean, just trust me on this. Patterns, you will get better on it as and when you do a lot more questions, and as and when you do a lot more practice, provided you are doing it in the correct way. So if you, let's say you had Fibonacci and stars, the way you're supposed to solve it is, I'll just open up the slides, right? So for example, again, now instead of this, we just take a random example, right? And let's say we had Fibonacci and stars. So for example, let's take, what's the first Fibonacci number? It's 0. So we have 0, and you had 1, and then you had, let's say, 1 over here, right? And then you had 2 over here, then you had I don't know, 3 here, 5 and 8, right? Let's say this is a pattern in itself, right? So how would we go about solving this pattern, right? Because just bring that here. Yeah, how would we go about solving this kind of a pattern? Well, again, if you look at it, there is a simple mathematical formula that it's following, right? At this particular point, we are printing one element, we are printing an element, but whenever we are at the midpoint, we are printing a star. So there are 3 rules that we are following here. The first rule is for the spaces. So how many spaces should we print here, right? That's the first rule. The second rule that we're following is actually generating the Fibonacci series, and the third rule that we're following is, while we are printing the Fibonacci series, if it is the mid element, then we will print stars, right? If you are able to divide it into these 3 rules, and for each 3 of the rules you're able to make a pseudocode, you will be able to solve it. Now this question will actually be for n is equal to 3, not 4. But if this question is a little bit more difficult, I don't think you'll be asked 3 or 4 such things in just one question. But even then, do a lot of practice on patterns, and you yourself will be able to see your thinking change. It is not something like, you can't just keep saying, what if there are prime numbers? What if there are Fibonacci numbers? It could be 10 other numbers also. There's no problem in that. But the way to solve it is by doing the practice yourselves and thinking of it in terms of mathematical formulas. Okay, At any given point in any given row, I have some spaces, I have an element, and in then also that element could be a Fibonacci number or it could be a space. Now, when are we printing a Fibonacci number? When are we printing a space? Once you start asking yourself these questions, you will quickly be able to form a pseudocode. And once you are able to form a pseudocode, translating into code will not be too difficult.
So, if the number is there in between the stars, and what could we
So
do?
what if there are numbers between the stars? What if there are alphabets between the stars? Don't worry. Try to find out what are the pattern that the number is following. What is the pattern that are the numbers increasing as even numbers? Are the numbers the same? It could be that all the numbers are 2. So it will be star 2, star 2, star 2. In which case there is no pattern it's following. You just print 2 every time. So it will depend on question to question basis. Any given question, please ask yourself these questions. How many rows are there? The most important question. How many rows are there? That will be your first for loop. Then in your second, third, fourth, fifth for loops, what you're going to do is answer these questions. How many columns are there? How many spaces are there? How many elements are there? How many second elements are there? How many third elements are there? Once you start answering these questions, the pseudocode will become very, very much clear to you. And if you really are interested in solving all of these type of questions, we have about 20 such patterns question on the platform which you can solve and see whether your answer is correct or not. So just log on and you'll get 20 patterns questions which you can do by yourself and see whether you're getting the correct answer.
So, there are a couple of emails that we got
Right.
in TCS NQT CMCQ. What are the which programming language to use?
Right. So one of the questions we got in by email and not by chat. So somebody was asking us on the email, and if you have certain questions which you could not ask on chat, please write to us on this email ID. But somebody was asking us on email about what are the programming questions that we're going to get, what are the programming MCQs that we're going to get, and so I covered this in the first slide as well, but let me just cover it a little bit again about what are the programming MCQs that we're going to get. The programming MCQs you're going to get generally are going to be like from 4 topics. Your C programming needs to be really good at it. So go ahead and revise your first semester C programming, because those are the MCQs that they're going to ask on. Revise on increment and decrement operators, revise on the pointers, revise on order notation. Now order notation, if you don't know, you can look online, or we are going to release a tutorial on that, so it will be simple for you. And searching, sorting, especially binary search, bubble sort, selection sort, merge sort, these are some really important topics for you to revise on in the programming MCQs. So I hope that answers your question, and if that didn't, just email us back and we'll be happy to answer it to you again.
So again, it's an email question. There's someone in second year, how it actually helps this pack helps them in terms of plain coding, or for third year or final year, how long it can actually help them.
Okay, so we've gotten a question from second year students, third year students, and fourth year students. So it's very good to see second year students reaching out to us and asking us. So what they're asking is, I'm a second year student. How is this actually helpful for me? Because I'm in second year, I still have a lot of time. Well, the first thing I'd say to all the second year students is, please talk to your fourth year seniors. You'll realize every fourth year senior has the one major advice to give the juniors, which is, we should have started earlier. We should have started coding much earlier. Now, if you're a second year student, what I will advise you to do is go ahead and take this course up, because the warm-up 1 and warm-up 2 you will be able to finish it really quickly, because you just completed your first year and you would have done C programming. So all of these concepts will be easy for you. But also you are going to get all of the previous year's questions. So the revision and the amount of skill that you'll gain is really good. And by the time you come to your fourth year, it's you'll already be ready with all of these things. For third and fourth year students, what is the lifetime of this course? Like some people are asking, oh, after Ninja, this course is not really going to be that useful. 2 points to tell everybody. One is, this course is not only meant for Ninja. It's not only meant for NQT. It is meant for every campus round that's going to happen in the upcoming months and the upcoming weeks. So for example, right after NQT, actually Wipro is going to come, and then a few companies are going to start hiring by AMCAT. So we have these previous year's questions over here. Once you practice these previous year's questions, these companies become easy for you. So similarly, we have for other companies as well, we have them in this called more IT companies, where the questions are 1 1 2 2 3 3 questions that we get. We are putting them there, and you can go ahead and practice them. The other part that I want to mention to all third and fourth year students, especially fourth year students, this is not the only time TCS is going to do an NQT or Ninja. They are going to continue to do more and more NQTs and Ninjas, because they will keep filling in. There are always people who miss out, or rather their requirements keep coming up. So for example, TCS might have more requirements. This is not the only recruitment that they'll do. They'll keep doing recruitments at certain intervals, so you don't want to miss out on it. If you take this course up now, you'll be ready for this one. If not this one, maybe after 3 months they hire again this course will be useful for you. The same thing goes for AMCAT, the same thing goes for Wipro. Not everybody finishes all of their headcount in just one hiring. There are many times that they'll do an off campus, they'll do a pool drive, they'll do a walk-in drive. So you take it now, and for a year this is really, really helpful to you. Right. So any other questions?
I don't think so.
Right, so I think those were the amount of questions we got. Just before I close, just wanted to say thank you everybody for watching. Please make sure you subscribe to this channel, because when you subscribe, we come to know how many people will be there, and also you will get the notification that we are going live. You will be able to plan better, and we are going to do a question on NQT and Ninja every day. So make sure that you subscribe so that you don't miss out on it. Please share this link with your friends so that you're not studying alone. Your friends are also getting the benefit out of it. And do like this video. It tells us how helpful it was. So yeah, please make sure you subscribe it. Just click the subscribe button and click the bell icon. You will start getting notifications as well. And everybody who's serious about their campus rounds and campus placements, make sure that you go to the link below. Sorry, so here, go to the link below, bit.ly/edist_ccp. Click that, go to that link and start doing at least the free warm-up, because you will understand how much revision you need in terms of the free warm-up, and the